Starcraft is not a game I'm nostalgic for, because I didn't play Starcraft 1 until I was 20-something. So there is far less danger of nostalgia goggles here than in the Warcraft 3 review. Important information is that I'm not a pro RTS player. I don't really touch multiplayer RTS. I play almost exclusively the campaigns. And I play them casually, and sometimes like a big Dumbo, and oh boy did Starcraft punish me for that. Back in the day I beat Starcraft 2 on Brutal, and in my memory that was easier than like 3/4 of the missions here. I don't think Starcraft 1 actually is harder, like on an objective level. I just think it's harder for me because of Starcraft's age. After playing Starcraft again for like the third time, I've realized that I like Starcraft 1 from afar. Then I get to enjoy the aesthetic and the story, but when I get close and start actually playing it, it starts pissing me off. This is a video where I eat my own words, because in the Warcraft 3 video I said old design is better, and Starcraft reminded me that sometimes old design and limitations really annoy you. Starcraft is a classic, a masterpiece of its time, and a really good game, but it shows its age. And man, the campaign just broke me. I'm too stupid for this game. Audio and visuals. The greatest strength of the game is the same as with most Blizzard games. Audio and visuals. I am playing the remastered version, but if you look at images or footage of the old version, bearing in mind that it's from 1998, it looks really good. But the sound is what really gets me, especially for Terrans. My favorite being the marine shooting sound. Ooh, just listen to that. A heavy automatic kinetic rifle. This is why I love the Terrans in Starcraft. They're not very advanced comparatively. Sure, they have spaceships, but they're still basically using the same stuff we're using today. Just bombs and rifles. They're going up against an extremely technologically evolved race that's basically using magic, and an extremely biologically evolved race that shapeshifts in like 2 minutes and has effectively infinite numbers. And the Terrans are holding their own. It's like if the cowboys of the 1800s were fighting the modern US Army. The Terrans are holding their own with revolvers, TNT grit, and chewing tobacco spit. A truly inspiring testament to the human spirit. Yeah, Terrans are my favorite race. The sounds of the Terran machine guns and the siege tanks are what stick in my head most, since it's what I use the most. And I never got tired of hearing it. And the deaths of enemies and buildings look and sound good. It's just all got good impact. As a general rule, it's all good, but there are some that border on annoying. Like the Zerg Muralisk endless flapping. And then loads of screeching and high-pitched sounds that get kind of annoying to hear after a while. The Protoss I'm more neutral on, just yeah, it's alright. There was nothing that stuck out as annoying or really good. Except the slashing sounds, I really like those. Another highlight is the Terran Academy. Yeah, that is also how I feel about school. The music is also good, especially the main menu theme. I'll talk more about the great aesthetic in the story section, but for now it's basically Aliens vs Predator, a dark and bloody horror theme. You also see that in pretty much every unit's death. they explode into gore. Now let's talk about the gameplay. Gameplay. Controlling the units. Coming to this one right after Warcraft 3, you really see how much they improved. Because Warcraft had a little clunk, but Starcraft is really clunky. Units go where you want them to go most of the time. Sometimes some collision detection or something goes off, or it for some reason thinks there is no path for it and then just runs off to the other side of the map. So a lot of the micro challenge is just correcting the fairly frequent bad pathfinding in your units, especially in a group. Because let's say they travel in a line down a hallway. If the units at the back of the line notice for an instant that hey, the units in front of me currently occupy the entire hallway. This means I must now turn back and go to the other hallway to get around, even though the units in front of me are moving ahead. And this happens a lot because there is elevation and units have to go up ramps to get to a higher elevation. And the ramps are very narrow and it causes your units to freak the fuck out. So you can't just send your guys to a place, at least not a long distance, because they will split up and probably just wander into an enemy base and forget about attack moving a group of units from your base to the enemy base. It will just end up with your units going in one by one and dying while accomplishing nothing. It's not herding cats, it's like herding 1-year-old dogs. It's like they're almost there. They are almost at the level where they understand, but they keep trying to play with each other or bark at the wind or wander off. And my units did often just wander off and I had to find them and yell at my screen, "Why are you there?" After playing Warcraft 3 just before it, I can really see how much they improved in this department between games. Because Starcraft is so much worse. The traffic jams and bumping into each other, it really tested my patience here. Starcraft has the same limitations as Warcraft 3. 12 unit selection caps, control groups don't appear in the UI, and when I had a group selected and used an ability, then every unit with that ability in the group would use that ability on the same target. It's not like in Warcraft 3 or Starcraft 2 where just one unit will do it, and so to use abilities effectively, you would have to quickly select each individual unit and use the ability on a different target. This requires quick thinking, reflexes, and most importantly, accuracy. And I am not that guy. I'm not that good at micro, but the AI can do that no problem, which makes things pretty difficult and frustrating for you in the campaign. The key takeaway here is that Starcraft is a very micro-intensive game, and one of the biggest reasons for that is its age. You have to think about things you don't really need to think about in newer RTS games. It's lacking the quality of life upgrades that we have gotten in, well, Starcraft 2. Like being able to select all units and just more than 12 units. And then the pathfinding being so good that you don't really have to think about it at all. In Starcraft 2, they go in a straight line, cluster together, and don't care if another friendly unit is in the way. In Starcraft 1, that's all missing, so most of what you have to do has to be carefully micromanaged. And for me, that became pretty damn tiring. But I kept going because despite all these flaws of age, it's still satisfying and fun to make an army, battle it out, and destroy the enemy base. It's the great audio-visual work and the satisfaction of having made a better army than the enemy. Like, yeah, I did that. I made that 12 stack of Zerglings. The races are asymmetrical. Protoss are strong and expensive, Zerg are cheap but numerous, with Terrans being the middle ground. So they have very different playstyles. A personal highlight for that is that I cannot play Zerg and Protoss well naturally. My brain always just turns off, but I get the Terrans. I always have a good time with them. But how is the balance? That's a tough one, because my experience is just from the campaign and the AI in the campaign basically cheats. It will hit every ability perfectly and micro every unit individually at the same time, and it seems to have infinite resources. When playing against something like that, most of the time you feel weaker, regardless of race. But yeah, no, the Protoss are fucking busted OP. Reavers, High Templar and Arbiters. I hate these units so much. With such a furious passion, oh my Christ. A Reaver shoots one attack and you just lost 6 to 10 units. You see 1 to 3 Reavers and in your head you've already accepted that, yeah, most of my ground force is just gone now. Its attack is just way too strong, even if it's slow. The High Templar Psystorm isn't as bad, but it's still pretty strong, and will take out a sizable chunk of your forces. But hey, just have flying units exclusively and you're good. Then the Arbiter. He stealths the forces beneath him, but also he puts your entire army in a timeout. And it feels like that timeout is 2 minutes. It's infuriating. Absolutely contemptible units. It was just miserable to fight against the Protoss in the campaign. 3 units that can instantly destroy your army. These units might be fine in multiplayer where they're limited by human reflexes and resources, but here in the campaign the AI just spam the units out and hit their abilities perfectly in a way that I would need many hours of practice to get close to. Okay, let's talk about the campaign. I've mostly covered how it feels to play, aside from buildings, and it's buildings. They work and make sense. Understandable tech tree with good static defenses. How does playing the campaign feel? Early on in the campaign, I feel like I really get the race and how to best use them. I'm doing pretty good and I'm having a lot of fun. But then I hit a massive difficulty jump and the enemy just sends doom wave after doom wave and have a really bulky defense that I can't seem to break. And I end up annoyed and confused. What am I doing wrong? Generally, just taking your time, making a huge army, expanding to take secondary bases, and then sending your huge army to clear the map will work. But in some missions, you will end up spending so much on defenses that it barely feels possible. This is of course caused by the AI being so much better at micro and uses abilities perfectly every time, and it cheats itself endless resources and makes endless units. That was really annoying to me when I was struggling with resources and making units was taking a long time. Especially when I always had to replace my units after attacks. The enemy would just beat me into a pulp and then I would rage quit. Which is code word for I typed power overwhelming into the chat and then destroyed the enemy. Then after that I'd go watch a walkthrough and feel like an idiot. The usual solution to missions was just sending more units at a time for an attack. My 12 unit max mindset from Warcraft 3 was a big problem here. Then in some missions it felt like there was a specific solution to a mission and only that solution. Like the final mission in the Zerg campaign in Brood War. Just make Devourers and Guardians and you easily sweep the map. There was just a lot of missions that were too oppressive and just not fun. and I felt boxed into specific playstyles, and I don't like that. I am a caveman. I make 12 circlings, send them into Smash, and if that doesn't work, I bash my head through the drywall. The AI just has a much easier time spitting out armies than you do, and it can be annoying to play against that when it's constant big waves. And sometimes a specific mission will just have units that fuck you up like Reavers, or the best example, the Tarrasque. It is a unit so strong that it will kill your units even if you have power overwhelming on, and it's really tanky. So you'd have to employ a specific strategy for it. Again, boxing you into a specific playstyle. I don't like that. I'm more of a freestyle artist. Overall, I did enjoy the campaign, especially the Brood War campaigns. The 2 platform missions were my favorite. One is where you are the Protoss, slowly breaking down enemy defenses with preset units that you get sent. And it's a really fun puzzle micro challenge, and the other one is where you are the Terrans stealing battle cruisers. That one is great for the same reason, and missions like that are great for teaching you how to get the most value out of your units. I was also impressed that you could get different missions depending on what you did in a mission. For example, the mission where you choose to take out either the nuclear silos or physics labs. Take out silos and in the next mission enemies won't have nukes. Take out labs and they won't have battle cruisers. Player choice. Cool. I also found the Brood War campaigns to be easier than the vanilla ones, which is odd because I kept hearing the opposite from others. There were difficult missions, sure, but overall I felt it was easier. Lastly is a bit about the economy. Upgrades and making units took a long time, and doing that every single mission became tedious, because I felt like I had to wait for upgrades to finish to get maximum value out of my resources. Which meant that the early parts of my missions were pretty boring, which made the campaign less fun to play. And some of those missions with the endless doom waves weren't necessarily hard. They were just tedious because they would take such a long time to build up the units and upgrades you needed to win. I've complained more than I praised the game, but I did have some fun. The gameplay is good and it feels good to control it, even if it is pretty clunky. There's great unit variety, which gives you lots of room for a lot of different strategies. There are more fun missions in the campaign than enraging ones, and they did shake up the objectives in the missions to keep it interesting, with the Brood War missions being way more fun and interesting than the vanilla ones. But I got really frustrated with the limitations of Starcraft's old engine and the overpowered AI and how punishing the campaign can be. That really saps away at the fun. There were moments where I just kept going for the story. Story. It's an old game, so the visual and audio presentation is going to be lacking. Most of the story comes through mission debriefings and characters talking to each other during missions. And you'll just be looking at units or character portraits, but the voice acting is really good. Every line is well delivered, carries some emotion and captivating to listen to. With the only issue being that sometimes the gameplay audio almost drowns out the dialogue, or at least makes it hard to listen to. Here is my absolute favorite line in the entire game.
Have faith, Zeratul. You almost sound as if you fear these humans. What are they to such as we? Was it not we who defeated the dreaded Overmind?
Yes, Artemis, we did vanquish the Overmind, but we did so with the help of humans.
Just the way he delivered that line shows you Zeratul's character. He is a patient and kind alien, But man, is he tired of how stupid his own race is. And after playing this game, yeah, so am I. But we'll get into that. What I really love about the original Starcraft that really feels missing in the sequel is the aesthetic. The horror vibe. The best example is the Zerg briefing. It looks like body horror. It's gross and slimy, and the spooky theme hammers it home. To a lesser degree, the Terran briefing is also solidly horror. A dimly lit, rusted padded cell with the worst looking gaming setup I've ever seen. It really reminds me of I have no mouth and I must scream. This is a dark galaxy with horrifying things in it, and surviving is a harsh struggle. The Protoss briefing is the exception. It's a lovely view from a well-lit fancy apartment, which fits in this game. They are removed from the struggle. When the Zerg pop up, they just laser the planet to death and go on with their day. They are technologically extremely powerful and arrogant. Yeah, the game is doing something right if I'm analyzing why the curtains are blue. Visual presentation is pretty weak, with the exception being the handful of cinematics, which are all usually very dark and some with a little humor. Like the one where Skeeter and Beater go for a drive.
Hey, what's that? Hold on a second. Steamroller! Looks like you mashed some poor fella's dog, Sarge.
Yeah, the Terrans are space hicks. At least the ones currently living in the Koprulu sector. My favorite cinematic is the one where Terrans board a ship infested with a Zerg.
Hey, are we really gonna blow this place?
Only if we see a Zerg.
Yeah, I got your Zerg right here.
I have to admit something. I've never watched an Aliens or a Predator movie. I've only seen parts of them, but I'm willing to bet that the movies are a lot like this scene. There's actually gore, and they show that the Zerg are a nightmare, and the sounds of the guns are great. This is what we lost when Blizzard decided to go all Disney on us. We lost video games made for adults. The cinematics don't look great, especially the character models, but this is pretty good for its age. And it just shows how impressive the jump in quality was between this and Warcraft 3. Before I talk about the writing, I need to explain that you take a passive role in the story. You are a voiceless character. For the Terrans, you are the Magistrate or a Captain. For the Zerg, you are a Cerebrate, which is basically a big Zerg brain. And for the Protoss, you are an Executor. I'm kind of glad they stopped doing this. It's just weird to have this authority figure that has no input on anything that's going on. The writing. I'm like half and half on it. Some of it's good, like most of the Terran campaign where it's holy fuck, there are Zerg, we need to fight them. Why are the Confederates punishing me for fighting them? Oh shit, they're actually using the Zerg to get rid of troublemakers. We need to rebel with Minsk. You get a good moment between Kerrigan and Raynor.
Captain Raynor, I finished scouting out the area and... you pig!
What? I haven't even said anything to you yet.
Yeah, but you were thinking it.
Oh, yeah. You're a telepath. Look, let's just get on with this, okay?
Right.
Wait, now Minsk wants to work with a dickhead Confederate guy? Now Minsk is using the Zerg, what the hell? But he says it's a necessary evil. Okay, I'm having a good time, the story is making sense, and the writing has really gripped me. And then I get to the part where Mengsk abandons Kerrigan to the Zerg. And the whole situation is just, why? Even if you want to get rid of Kerrigan, just send the shuttle. If you don't, then that pisses off Raynor and then he becomes trouble. You can even send the shuttle a little too close to danger, which makes it crash. And that might fool Raynor, and you can avoid Raynor becoming an issue. But now you have guaranteed Raynor becoming an issue. And then Mengsk doesn't do anything about Raynor. Isn't Mengsk supposed to be smart? Isn't this the kind of thing he would think through? Instead, he just makes the stupidest move he could make. A move that makes Raynor and the Magistrate become his enemies. And these are guys that lead a significant portion of his army. So with this move, you lose a lot of manpower. It's just a very stupid move and out of character for a smart guy. Even if he has a large ego and anger problems, there would still be a smarter move to make. Some stuff just feels a bit forced for the twist, or it would only happen if the people involved were really stupid. The Zerg campaigns are good, they make sense. The Zerg wanna take over the world, simple. But it was dragging its heels a bit early in its vanilla campaign, with like 3 missions where you're just protecting the chrysalis that turns out to be Kerrigan. But I like the way the Overmind talks. He uses fancy words and that impresses a simpleton like me. The vanilla Protoss campaign, almost in its entirety, is stupid. Just a dumb race of people. The Zerg are invading their homeworld. What does the Conclave, the highest political power of the Protoss, do? Go after one of their own for wrongthink. Actually, that's the most realistic portrayal of politicians I've ever seen in a video game. Never mind, this is actually brilliant writing. The early part of the campaign is fighting on and defending Aiur, but then you start hunting for Tassadar after he tried to help by telling us to kill Cerebrids, which doesn't work because only Dark Templar can kill Cerebrids, because of weird sci-fi logic, which Tassadar probably didn't even know about. But the Conclave considers this a betrayal, so off with his head, I guess. But then the Executor decides to side with Tassadar, and we go get Zeratul and then return to Aiur. And upon our return, the Conclave decides to execute Zeratul and arrest Tassadar. So now, during an invasion, we have a Protoss civil war. The invasion of Aiur is just extremely embarrassing for the Protoss race as a whole. A civil war during a Zerg invasion and then Tassadar surrenders when we are winning, so that Protoss will stop killing each other. But then, more Protoss are killed to free him. What a misplay by Tassadar there. He would have prevented a lot more death by just immediately subjugating the Conclave. Our home is invaded by a hostile alien race, but most of our focus is gonna be on fighting ourselves. Fucking what? Overall, the story is good, but I feel like I'm being rage-baited by extreme stupidity. Even if they are the most egotistical race in the universe and don't see the Zerg as a threat really, you'd still clean that mess up and then take care of the rest. I mean, from the perspective of the Conclave, Tassadar is not actively attacking you even if he's a heretic. That still puts him in that deal with it later category. This whole situation was the most egregious stupidity in the game. And the Brood War campaign does suffer from stupidity too. What sticks out to me most there is terrible situations could have been avoided by the characters just talking to each other, instead of shoot first, ask questions later. Most notably General Dugal attacking and then killing Stukov instead of just asking, "Hey, what's going on, buddy?" And then Protoss immediately attacking and killing Aldaris instead of reaching out and asking, "Hey, what's going on, buddy?" It's just dumb and breaks the immersion. This blew my mind when I heard it first. General Dugal is leading an attack force from Earth to take over the Kprulu sector. I played the Starcraft 2 games first and then played Starcraft 1, but it blew my mind that Earth was in the universe and apparently they have a pretty strong empire. And this was completely ignored in Starcraft 2. Earth sends a fleet to the Kprulu sector, which then takes over the sector and then gets decimated because of stupidity. Which means they sent a fleet and then no word got back. This would cause a panic and would make the UED build up their army and send scouts, and then maybe give it a second try. But instead the UED just got ignored. Anyway. Overall, the story is a good ride with good twists, great character dialogue, iconic characters, and moments. But there was a lot of doofy Dumbo stuff in the story. It's still good, but it's got some absence of logic in it, and a lot stops making sense when you start thinking about it. Like, how did Kerrigan mind control the matriarch? Never got an answer to that. Let's move on. Actually, no. Why would Dugal want to destroy the side disruptor thing that can literally control Zerg when that is their goal? That is why the fleet is here, to control the Overmind and the whole sector. That device is literally the key to doing that. And you want to destroy it when you are in the position to take it. It's so stupid. I liked that it was all character driven. Characters making choices that drove the story forward. A lot of stupid choices, but these were just people making moves and trying to come out on top. Kinda like Game of Thrones. A narrative driven by characters instead of whatever a fucking prophecy says. Story good and bad. It's got its highs and lows. Conclusion. This is a game I really wanna like, and I do enjoy aspects of it, but there is too much that makes playing the game frustrating and unenjoyable for me. But I really like the Starcraft universe presented here. A dark universe. I mean, the original Zerg lore was horrifying. The original Zerg was just a parasite, a worm. Zerglings and Hydralisks, those were just other species that the worm crawled into and assimilated. The real Zerg is actually the larva. That is so much more interesting and cool than they were jungle animals that were good at evolving. So the gods Argeras decided to copy the homework and turn them into a hive mind army. It's just lame when you compare the retcon to the original. They already had something so much better and they threw it away to try and make their new villain Diablo more cool. If I turn the ants in my backyard into an army by genetically modifying them, that doesn't make me or the ants cool. It makes me a weirdo. This just highlights what I really like here. The original lore was just so good, and that dark vibe and a wide selection of characters all making moves. It was a setup where anything could happen. That was what was good about the story. It isn't just that the bad guy won and that's cool because it rarely happens. It was good because anyone could potentially come out on top. And Blizzard lost the ability to tell those kinds of stories. Now it's just corporate committee-approved cartoons where they defeat the villain of the week. A villain with no personality that just wants bad things to happen because he is bad. Here, every character had personality, especially the villains. Mengsk with his giant ego and anger, the Overmind high on his own intellect, and Kerrigan with sadism. Rubbing salt in the wound is basically her personality. I really like what they were going for here, gameplay and story-wise, but the execution was very flawed. And some of it's due to the limitations of their time, and they were inexperienced, which makes it impressive how much they improved in both gameplay and storytelling in Warcraft 3. I was enjoying the game in the beginning, but the longer I played, the less fun I was having. And by the time I was in the Zerg campaign of Brood War, I was down to playing one mission a day, because I was not really having fun anymore, and kept playing just for the story and the video. I did enjoy both Terran campaigns, which is mostly down to me just liking the Terrans as a race gameplay-wise, and enjoyed the Protoss and Zerg far less. It also felt like their campaigns were way harder than the Terran ones, which also contributes to the lack of enjoyment. I don't think I'd play Starcraft 1 again. I just missed the quality of life stuff in Starcraft 2 too much. And even just the pathfinding improvements in Warcraft 3. But I would watch a YouTube movie of the game or play Mass Recall, which is Starcraft 1's story in Starcraft 2 gameplay. Because the story is a good ride even if it is flawed. And the aesthetic and the vibe was just terrific. I don't think I'd recommend playing the game to the modern gamer unless they can stomach a lot of clunkiness, but I would absolutely recommend it as a YouTube movie. Starcraft is a classic and was a masterpiece at its time, but it shows its age. I can see what's so good about it, but the flaws take away too much of the fun for me. I give the game 2 Arbiters out of 3 Reavers. Thank fuck they aren't in Starcraft 2. Oh, wait. No. Fuck. I think this is the video where I disprove that I'm a boomer that just likes old things. Coming into an old classic and walking away not really liking the experience. But I'd say I was more than fair. Also, I did rip on the Dark God storyline in Starcraft 2, but all the seeds for that were sown here in Starcraft 1 and Brood War, so it was always going to be a factor in the sequel. But it could have been executed better. And so, Starcraft 2 video sometime in the near future. Until then, like and subscribe, call me Uncle Brian, and have a mixed day.